Mike, after 22 years, the city's restructuring fleet maintenance. Your position is redundant. Rick Peterson, the depot operations manager, barely met my eyes across his clean desk. You need to clear out your locker by 5. 22 years gone. Just like that. The hum of the fluorescent lights in his office suddenly felt deafening. My hands, calloused from decades of wrestling with engines, clenched into fists under the table. I just stood. No shouting. No begging. I stood, turned, and walked out, his gaze burning a hole in my back. Back in the noisy, grease-scented my real office, a few of the younger mechanics, guys I'd taught how to bleed a hydraulic line, glanced up, then quickly looked away. News travels like an oil slick in a place like this. I started packing. My daughter's first crayon drawing, taped inside my locker for a decade. The chipped world's best mechanic mug, a gift from my wife Sarah. My specialized torque wrench set. Over the next 24 hours, I went through the motions, dropped off my keys, signed some papers. Brenda from HR slid at me with a sympathetic frown, and drove home in a daze. But as I sat in my old pickup that evening, staring at the city skyline, a cold resolve settled in. They thought they could just erase me. They had no idea the ghosts I'd left in their machines. The writing had been on the wall, or rather, on the new digital notice boards Rick installed. 6 months ago, Alex Chen arrived, the young, efficiency consultant, always with a tablet, always talking about optimizing asset lifecycle management. 3 months back, my override codes for emergency parts procurement started getting rejected. New protocol, Mike, Rick had said a little too smoothly. A month ago, I walked past the main conference room and saw Chen and Rick huddled over blueprints of a streamlined maintenance facility. My familiar bays carved up and renamed. That was when I knew for sure. So, I'd quietly backed up all my detailed maintenance logs for the older fleet, the ones Chen dismissed as legacy assets. I also made copies of the fuel consumption and parts override reports. Stuff nobody but me paid attention to anymore. My gut had been screaming betrayal for weeks. I started at the Metro Transit Depot when I was 26. Fresh out of trade school, full of piss and vinegar. The place smelled of diesel, hot metal, and honest sweat. I loved it. I rose through the ranks, from apprentice to lead hand, then supervisor. I knew every one of our 100+ buses like the back of my hand, from the old GMC Warhorses to the newer hybrids. I remember the blizzard of '08, me and David Miller working 36 hours, straight to get enough buses de-iced and running so the city wouldn't grind to a halt. We got a commendation for that. Framed it, hung it in the break room. Probably in a dumpster now. The old guard guys like Mr. Henderson, the previous ops manager, understood that keeping a city moving was more than just numbers. It was about reliable iron and the men who knew how to fix it. Rick Peterson, who took over 2 years ago after Henderson retired, was different. He came from corporate logistics, spoke a different language, KPIs, synergies, right sizing. He saw the mechanics as a cost center, not the heart of the operation. He'd say things like, "Mike, these older buses are draining our CapEx. We need to embrace predictive maintenance software," looking right past my decades of hands-on experience. The software couldn't tell you when a specific engine just sounded wrong before it threw a rod. The distance grew. First, it was small things. Rick started holding strategy sessions about fleet upgrades with Chen, excluding me, the guy who actually kept the current fleet from falling apart. Then, my overtime budget for preventative work on the older buses was slashed. "We need to focus resources on the new electric bus pilot program, Mike," Rick would say, echoing Chen's latest presentation. They'd whisper in Rick's office, door slightly ajar, Chen's voice sharp with talk of outdated practices and personnel optimization. The final straw, the real turning point, was 3 weeks ago. I'd flagged a critical issue with the steering column on Bus 72, one of our oldest but most reliable workhorses. Standard procedure was to ground it immediately. I found it back on the active roster the next day, my urgent tag removed. Chen had apparently convinced Rick it was a low-probability risk, and that taking it offline would hurt their precious uptime statistics. That wasn't just negligence, it was dangerous. That's when I knew they weren't just sidelining me. They were dismantling everything I'd built, Everything that kept people safe. The day after Rick Peterson told me my 22 years were redundant, the silence in my house was louder than any air wrench. Sarah, my wife, tried to make small talk, but we both knew. My life's work, maintaining the city's bus fleet, had been yanked out from under me. But that night, staring at the backup drive I'd quietly made copies of old maintenance logs, parts requisitions, fuel consumption reports for the legacy assets, Chen and Rick were so keen to forget a different kind of hum started in my head. Not anger, not yet. More like the click of a ratchet finding its gear. I plugged the drive into my old laptop. My workshop, my real office was gone, but my methods weren't. I started with the parts invoices for the older buses, the ones Rick had squeezed maintenance budgets on. Precision Fleet Solutions. The name popped up again and again. Invoices for EGR coolers, turbo actuators, complex fuel injectors, pricey stuff. The approvals, mostly Rick Peterson. Some signed by Arthur Finch, the director of finance, if they hit a certain dollar amount. I started cross-referencing the invoice dates with my old handwritten logs, the ones detailing which buses were actually in the shop, and for what. Bus 307, for example. Precision Fleet billed for a new turbo in March. My log showed Bus 307 was parked all of March, waiting on a back-ordered transmission part. No way it needed a turbo replaced if it wasn't even running. Then Bus 412 billed for 3 complete sets of injectors from Precision Fleet over 6 months. Those injectors are built to last years, not months. These weren't just errors. This was systematic. It was this parts over invoicing, plain and simple, for phantom parts that were never installed. The realization hit me like a cold slap. They weren't just incompetent or pushing me out for being old school. They were thieves. My shock slowly cooled, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I'd spent a lifetime fixing things. This was broken, and I knew how to take things apart to find the problem. My dismissal wasn't just about efficiency. It was about me being in a position to see this. They thought I'd just fade away. They misjudged Mike Ramsey. My first move had to be cautious. A direct accusation would be dismissed. I needed to see how they'd react. I set up a new, anonymous email account. My target, Arthur Finch. His signature was on the higher value Precision Fleet approvals. I drafted a simple message. Subject, Query Re. Precision Fleet Solutions invoices, fleet maintenance. The body was bland. Dear Mr. Finch, in reviewing some historical fleet maintenance data, I've noticed some invoicing patterns from Precision Fleet Solutions for specific older bus units that appear anomalous. Could there have been a data entry or system reconciliation issue on these? Appreciate any clarification. I hit send. Then I waited. The first bite came not from Finch but from HR. An email from Linda Jenkins, a name I vaguely recognized. Mr. Ramsey. It has come to our attention that you may be attempting to access or inquire about confidential Metro Transit information. Please be reminded that any discussions regarding internal operations should cease. We trust you will honor your professional obligations as we finalize your separation terms. No mention of what those terms were. They were trying to muzzle me before I'd even barked. An hour later, my phone rang. Rick Peterson. His voice was too smooth, like fresh oil on a dirty engine. Mikey, Art Finch mentioned you sent a little email. Everything okay, pal? Just some old data, right? Probably Alex Chen's new system flagging weird stuff. You know how those algorithms are. I kept my voice level. Just tidying up, Rick. Saw some numbers on Precision Fleet that didn't add up to my old logs. Figured it was a clerical mix-up. He chuckled, a dry, forced sound. Yeah, don't you worry your head about that ancient history. Hey, listen. I was talking to Linda in HR about your package. I think I can get them to, enhance it a little. Good reference, the works. We just need to get the standard paperwork signed. Confidentiality, all that. No need to stir up old dust, right? The offer hung there, greasy and obvious. I'll consider it, Rick, I said and hung up. He was nervous. Finch was nervous. They were in it together. The hook was set. Their nervous reactions told me I was on the right track. But I needed more than just suspicious invoices. I needed something solid. Something they couldn't explain away as clerical errors. I went back to my backup drive, digging into the scanned work orders. And there it was. For Bus 307's Phantom Turbo, a work order existed. It had what looked like the initials of a junior mechanic I knew, Bobby Drake, but the scrawl was off, not Bobby's neat print. And then, Rick Peterson's clear signature authorizing the parts from Precision Fleet. Another for Bus 412's excessive injectors. Same pattern, questionable junior mechanic sign-off, Rick's approval. These weren't just over-invoicing, this was a work order manipulation. Some listed parts weren't even compatible with the bus models cited. My personal logs, the ones I kept meticulously, showed those buses either weren't in for that kind of repair or were down for entirely different issues. This was direct evidence linking Rick to falsified documents. This Precision Fleet scam felt too small for the level of anxiety I sensed. What else were they up to? My mind went to Alex Chen and his relentless push for modernization, particularly the new city-wide GPS tracking system, SmartTrack Telematics. It cost a fortune, and Chen had steamrolled every objection. I searched my email archive, the one I'd backed up. I'd been sicked on some early technical queries about SmartTrack installations. The bid from SmartTrack was nearly 15% higher than two other reputable firms. Yet Chen, with Rick's vocal support and Finch's quick financial approval, had pushed it through. Emails showed Chen dismissing pilot program reports from other cities that flagged SmartTrack's unreliability and poor data accuracy, calling them isolated incidents and emphasizing the value of a long-term strategic partnership. This felt bigger, much bigger. Were there vendor kickbacks involved? Or was the city just paying a premium for a subpar system while Chen, Rick, and Finch lined their pockets? It became clear, Chen wasn't just an ambitious consultant. He was the instigator bringing these opportunities. Rick was the inside enabler. Finch cooked the books. They were a team. My dismissal wasn't just to hide the Precision Fleet stuff. It was to remove the one guy who knew the old systems, the real costs, and who might question the shiny, expensive new toys. They weren't just streamlining. They were systematically looting. I spent the next 2 days glued to my screen, fueled by coffee and a growing sense of outrage. I compiled everything. Spreadsheets showing the Precision Fleet charges against actual bus availability. Scanned copies of the doctored work orders. Rick's and Finch's signatures stark against the cheap paper. The emailed chains detailing the hard sell on SmartTrack, the inflated price, the dismissal of valid concerns. I laid out a timeline, a clear, undeniable narrative of deceit. I wasn't a lawyer, but I knew how to build a case for a failed engine. This was a failed system, deliberately sabotaged. I consolidated it all into a single, concise report, a briefing document, with all supporting evidence on a separate flash drive. No emotional language, just facts, figures, and their own damned signatures. Now, who to take it to? HR was compromised. The police, maybe later, but I needed someone on the inside first. Someone with authority and integrity. I thought of Eleanor Vance, city councilwoman, on the Metro Transit Oversight Committee. I'd met her a couple of times. Years ago, she'd toured the depot, asked pointed questions, not the usual fluff. She'd seemed genuinely interested in the nuts and bolts, not just the PR. She had a reputation for being tough but fair. I found her official contact information online and sent a carefully worded email, Councilwoman Vance. My name is Mike Ramsey, recently former fleet maintenance supervisor at Metro Transit. I have information regarding significant operational and financial irregularities at Metro Transit that I believe warrants your immediate and confidential attention. I would be grateful for the opportunity to discuss this with you. She replied within hours, suggesting a meeting the next morning at a small, independent coffee shop miles from City Hall. The next day I sat across from Eleanor Vance. She had a sharp, intelligent gaze. I kept it brief. Councilwoman, thank you for your time. I was with Metro for 22 years. I was let go 2 weeks ago. In reviewing my records, I've found serious issues. I handed her the printed summary and the flash drive. This details what I believe to be systematic parts procurement fraud and significant concerns about the SmartTrack telematics contract, among other things. The supporting evidence, invoices, manipulated work orders, internal emails is on this drive. She listened without interruption, her expression becoming increasingly serious as she skimmed the summary. Eleanor Vance finished the summary, then looked me straight in the eye. Mr. Ramsey, she said, her voice low and even. If what's outlined here is accurate, this is extremely serious. This isn't just waste. This points to potential collusion and theft of public funds. She tapped the flash drive. I need to review this thoroughly. I'll need to consult with the committee's legal counsel and possibly the city auditor, very discreetly. Do not discuss this with anyone else for the time being. Let me make some initial careful inquiries. I nodded. All I want is for the truth to come out, Councilwoman. A day later, my old friend David Miller called. His voice hushed. Mike, something's up. Rick's been a wreck, chain, smoking outside. I saw him, Chen and Finch in Rick's office, door cracked, looking like they'd seen a hearse pull up. Later, a shredding truck was here for hours, and IT guys were told to perform urgent data hygiene on some old finance servers. Vance was moving. They were scared. Good. The fight was on. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling a cautious sort of hope. Eleanor Vance wasn't just some politician. She had steel in her spine. True to her word, things started moving, quiet at first, then like a storm gathering offshore. About a week later, she called me. Mike, I've presented your information and evidence to the city auditor's office and the district attorney. They're taking it very seriously. An official investigation is being launched. They'll want to speak with you, get a formal statement. I've stressed the need for discretion to protect you. My evidence, especially those doctored work orders and the email trails, became Exhibit A. The chain of custody for that flash drive was meticulously documented. I spent a day with a couple of serious-looking investigators, laying out everything I knew, every discrepancy I'd found. They were professionals, asked sharp questions. They got it. This wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping. Eleanor and I had a plan, if you could call it that. More like a carefully baited hook. She made sure word got back to Rick Peterson, Alex Chen, and Arthur Finch through official, but deliberately vague channels that, or anomalies, in fleet procurement and contract management, were under review. Nothing specific, just enough to make them sweat. David Miller was my eyes and ears inside the depot. Place is a madhouse. Mike, he'd tell me over untraceable burner phones we used. Rick's jumpier than a cat on a hot griddle. Chen's trying to look cool, but he's shredding documents like there's no tomorrow. Saw Finch leaving late with a briefcase stuffed fuller than a Thanksgiving turkey. They were making mistakes, trying to cover their tracks, digging themselves deeper. The city investigators, meanwhile, were doing their own quiet digging, armed with my roadmap. They started forensic accounting on Metro Transit's books, focusing on precision fleet solutions and the SmartTrack telematics deal. It was like watching a slow-motion demolition, knowing where the charges were set. The hammer fell on a Tuesday morning. I was having coffee on my porch, same as any other day, trying to figure out my next move. My phone buzzed. It was David. Mike, you are not going to believe this. Cops everywhere. They just walked Rick Peterson out in handcuffs. Then they got Chen in the conference room. Finch was pulled from a budget meeting. It's chaos, man! Absolute chaos! He was practically shouting into the phone. I hung up, a cold satisfaction washing over me. I flipped on the local news. Sure enough, live footage from outside the Metro Transit building. Rick, looking pale and disheveled, being guided into a police cruiser. Chen, trying to hide his face from the cameras. Finch, looking like he was about to throw up. The reporter was breathless. Multiple arrests at Metro Transit, allegations of a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. They got them. Red-handed. The evidence was too solid. The full story that unraveled over the next few weeks was even uglier than I'd initially suspected. The investigators, armed with my initial findings, peeled back layers of rot. The Precision Fleet scam alone was close to $2 million in phantom parts and inflated invoices over 3 years. The SmartTrack telematics deal. Turns out Chen had a shell corporation that received a hefty consulting fee from SmartTrack right after the contract was signed. Classic kickback. And it wasn't just them. A couple of mid-level managers in purchasing were implicated, taking smaller bribes to look the other way. The total fraud was pushing $5 million. Public trust was shattered. City council hearings were brutal. My name was kept out of the initial press, per my request and Vance's efforts, but my detailed logs and analysis were the backbone of the prosecution's case. Rick Peterson, faced with the mountain of evidence, especially the forged work orders, started singing to save his own skin, implicating Chen as the mastermind. Chen tried to blame Rick. Finch just crumbled. The legal gears ground on. Rick Peterson, in exchange for his cooperation, got a reduced sentence, but still faced significant jail time. Alex Chen, arrogant to the end, fought the charges but was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and bribery. Arthur Finch pled guilty early, got probation and a hefty fine, his career and reputation ruined. Metro Transit fired them all, obviously. My own separation from Metro was quietly finalized. No enhanced package, just my due. The real reward was seeing those guys face the music. My relationship with Metro Transit was over. Done, finished. I knew I couldn't go back, even if they'd asked, which they didn't. The place, the system, it felt tainted. Too many bad memories, too much deceit. I needed a clean break. Sarah supported me. You need to do what makes you happy, Mike, she said, or at least not miserable. So, I took a small business loan, cashed in a portion of my retirement carefully, legally. Found a decent-sized, run-down garage bay for rent in an industrial park on the other side of town. Not pretty, but it had good bones. I spent a month cleaning it out, painting, installing lifts, buying good used diagnostic tools. My old toolbox, the one I'd packed up from the depot, felt right at home. I hung up a simple sign, Ramsey's Auto and Fleet. Honest repairs, no fancy mission statement, just the truth. It was slow at first, a few locals, some small delivery businesses needing reliable work on their vans. I didn't advertise much beyond a simple local flyer. Word of mouth. That's how I'd always believed good work should spread. My days found a new rhythm. Early mornings, coffee, then the clang of tools, the smell of grease and solvent, but this time, it was my grease, my solvent. I diagnosed tricky engine problems, did honest brake jobs, explained every repair to my customers. I wasn't just a number anymore. I was Mike Ramsey, the guy who could fix their car right, for a fair price. I even started mentoring a young kid from the neighborhood, Leo, who was eager to learn but couldn't afford trade school. He reminded me of myself, all those years ago. My ASA certifications were current, and I encouraged him to study for his. It felt good building something new, something clean. One afternoon a woman came in. Her old sedan was making a funny noise. I diagnosed a worn CV joint, showed her the problem, gave her a fair quote. Fixed it the same day. When she picked it up, she looked at the bill, then at me. You know, she said, I've been to 3 other shops. 2 tried to sell me a whole new transmission. The other one just shrugged. Thank you for being honest. That hit me harder than any commendation from Metro. That was it. That was the value. Not just fixing engines, but fixing a little bit of the broken trust people have. Later that week, Eleanor Vance stopped by. The city was slowly recovering from the scandal. You did a good thing, Mike, she said, looking around my small busy shop. More than you know. You showed people that one person standing up can make a difference. The anger I'd carried for so long after being fired. It was gone. Replaced by a quiet sort of satisfaction. A sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I was my own boss doing work I respected on my own terms. Rick, Chen, Finch, they were facing their own kinds of reckonings. Last I heard, their appeals were denied. They built their careers on shortcuts and lies. It all caught up. Me. I just kept turning wrenches, focused on the task at hand. I learned that sometimes, the whole damn system can seem rigged. But if you stick to what's right, if you value honest work and integrity, you can build something solid, something that lasts. Maybe not a giant city fleet, but a good life. And sometimes, that's more than enough.